And at this point, we all know what's... yeah, that right there. Here we skip right into episode 10, which is entitled, Make It Stop. The jokes write themselves. What do you want me to say? And we honestly are just going through the motions at this point. What can I even say after the fourth 1 year later that's going to surprise you? How many times can I repeat, the events of the last act don't matter. We skipped over important developments. We're going to see an uncharacteristic number of characters not behave as though, you know, it's standard at this point. We're not going to see Dedra coping with the loss of Cyril or any follow-up to her last scene. She's doing just fine now. Better than fine, in fact. She's reverted to her old self and has finally caught up with Luthen, discovering that he's Axis, the assistant leader of the rebellion. So as much as I want to enjoy this scene, as much as I do enjoy this scene, right? These two characters who have been dueling with each other in secret in the shadows across the galaxy, finally face to face, watching them now rhetorically dance around one another, both pretending that they don't know who the other one is, playing their roles, playing their parts, the suspense growing, the tension mounting, it building, and then the payoff, the Starpath unit.
A vintage Imperial Starpath unit.
It's at this moment we realize the jig is up. Dedra's won. Just, what a fantastic reveal. Season 1 really earned this, because Season 1 did all the legwork to get us here. What did the last 3 episodes do? Huh? Really, what did the last 3 episodes do to get us to this point? Think on that. As much as I enjoyed this scene, you could skip Act 3. Hell, you could skip from episode 12 of Season 1 to this point, and it would flow just fine because nothing that happened in the interim has affected this character or her behavior in the long term. There is not like continuous character growth or development as you might expect across a contiguous series, because that's not really what this is anymore. It's just a collection of self-contained short stories, an anthology almost. Here's Andor's vacation in Nicaragua. Here's Krennic's birthday party. Here's Dedra's breakup. Very sad. Here's that time Bix got sexually assaulted. There's so much wasted time. Well, again, all I can do is repeat the same criticisms because they keep making the same mistakes. I can sit here all day and say, wow, this whole Gorman thing looks like it really fucked her up, but that doesn't amount to anything. Right, there was a scene with this character, and I'm crazy because I think that it should matter in the long run. This scene feels completely out of place in the grand scheme of this show. But seriously, if you liked Season 1, watch this scene and just block out all the other garbage. Enjoy what you can. Remember the Starpath unit? That thing mattered. The experimental TIE fighter, maybe not, but the Starpath unit, yes, because it's from Season 1. And Dedra's here, finally, and she's caught up with Luthen. Huzzah. Okay, question number 1. Why now? They skipped forward a year so they don't actually have to explain to the audience how she found Luthen out. She just accomplished this off-screen, but in this particular case, is that actually a problem? Because it's not improbable at all that she can pull this off. It's almost certain that, like, after Mon Mothma's dumb publicity stunt, and especially after shooting their way out of the Senate building the deaths of multiple ISB agents, that the ISB would raid her home, for example, looking for her, and interrogate the people closest to her, such as her husband. And he just might recall how strangely and suspiciously she and Luthen Rael acted at that wedding a couple years back, which may have been the first time he's actually even seen the two of them interacting directly. He gives this information to the ISB, perhaps Dedra personally, and this leads her to Luthen. It's not at all an impossibility that Dedra would track Luthen down, it's actually inevitable. It's an inevitability, right? But none of what I just described actually happens in this season. Those are all scenes that I wrote in personally to make this story beat make sense. The same thing you have to do with Cyril's heel turn. But even that imaginary fix sucks because it still depends on Luthen and Kleya acting out of character and Mon Mothma being an idiot. And even if Dedra had interviewed her husband, why then would it take a whole year to go arrest Luthen? This isn't a series of events that should have taken a year, it should have taken a couple days. Did she spend a year mourning Cyril? Did she take an extended vacation on Poketaru? We'll never know, because we just skipped that chapter when the timeline from this to this should have been like a week tops. It's because, again, we're meant to simultaneously believe the characters have been very busy in the past year, while also believing that they were on pause for a whole year. Because this season was a mistake. Question number 2. Why did it have to be Dedra? I'm sure there are reasons that it could have had to have been, but why did it have to be Dedra? Are there no other competent ISB agents in the entire agency? Again, same scenario. If there were, they should have been able to follow any number of breadcrumbs to Luthen 50 to 51 weeks ago. You infiltrated Bail Organa's spy network. Did anyone interview anyone, gather any intel at all regarding the shootout at the Imperial Senate? If there is a reason that it had to be her, it seems now that it was lost in the obligatory time skip, and now it appears that the ISB, in a galaxy that once felt so grand and expansive, is comprised of like 1 or 2 members total. And if a single operative is incapacitated for any measure of time, the ISB is entirely crippled and shockingly incompetent in all other matters. So no, you cannot just pull this Starpath unit out and say, well, I did it, I cracked the case, and expect me to not ask any questions about that. You cannot just grab a thing from Season 1 and wave it around in the air as proof that you wrote good. Well, luckily for us, these questions will get answered next episode. There is a scene coming up to fill in the gaps, because this is one of the better acts of the show. So we'll just have to wait and see. How satisfactory are the answers that we get? Will my suggestion that perhaps the events of episode 9 should inform the events of episode 10 be better or worse in concept than what we actually get? Stay tuned to find out. But Luthen, realizing he's caught, gores himself with an antique dagger so that he can't be taken alive. Unfortunately for him, and really for all of us, this attempt fails, so the episode must go on, as Dedra rushes him to the hospital. She needs him alive for interrogation. This leaves Kleya, the true leader of the New World Order, to undertake a solo mission to infiltrate the hospital and do the unthinkable, killing her mentor and father figure Luthen for his own sake, and for the sake of the rebellion. Perhaps even for the sake of the entire galaxy. There is a theme here that I do enjoy, the idea of the unsung hero. Everyone in the galaxy knows Luke and Han and Chewbacca, and some may even know Andor or Jyn Erso. But the rebellion wouldn't even exist without the sacrifices of people whose memory dies with them. People like Kleya and Luthen and Lonnie Jung. Jung. I think it's Young actually. Lonnie Young, the man on the inside at the ISB. He was more than just a mannequin for Luthen to yell at in Season 1. The man had a whole story told between the lines. A guy putting his neck on the line each and every day to do what's right, yet doomed to never receive a shred of recognition, fated to die in obscurity. People really will never know what he sacrificed. And despite the constant pressure, day in, day out, the guy never cracked. He pulled through until the end. Earlier in this episode, he discovered the truth about the Death Star project and called Luthen for an emergency meeting in the park, in public, where Luthen meets with him wearing his disguise.
I am in disguise. This way no one will recognize me.
Okay, so now he's comfortable being spotted in public talking to Lonnie as Luthen the antique guy. Not just crossing paths at a party, but that they actively meet together elsewhere, in public. Why did he ever do this? Why did he ever do the undercover? Why did he ever do the alley meetings? Fuck it, whatever.
I'm burned. They'll be on me soon enough.
And that's why we're meeting in public, as your public persona, so that everyone knows that I'm meeting with you, Luthen Rail, and that you are Axis. Second in command. This is definitely not a reason that we should be meeting in a back alley somewhere, pretending not to be us. Or hey, if it's okay for Luthen the antique guy to be seen talking to Lonnie, why doesn't Lonnie just visit the gallery like everyone else? What are we doing? Look, I said Lonnie's a good guy. I never said this was a good scene.
I need you to tell me how you're going to get us out of Coruscant.
Tell me what you've done.
I have had Dedra Miro's code cert for a year now.
I have had Dedra Miro's code cert for a year! Hey everyone! I have had Dedra Miro's code cert for a year! So Lonnie hacked Dedra's for affinity and has discovered that they're building a Death Star. And getting this info to Luthen was his final act of heroism before Luthen, unfortunately, had to tie up this loose end. Thus, fulfilling what was said back in Season 1.
What do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them.
Which, of course, was lame and boring and sterile, and nobody cares. I'm sure glad that Brasso and Cinta didn't have to suffer the same narrative relevance that Lonnie did. Speaking of narrative relevance, let's get back to Kleya's grand adventure. The ISB have taken over a hospital and locked it down so that they can tend to Luthen's wounds and prep him for interrogation. Kleya needs to sneak in, switch off Luthen's life support, and let his secrets die with him. Understandably, she's an emotional wreck during all this, as she should be, and in the process we see a series of flashbacks regarding their relationship. We have a rather lengthy scene of a younger Luthen having, more or less, a panic attack in the midst of a battle, or perhaps an outright slaughter, taking refuge in his ship as he listens, reluctantly, to the atrocities occurring just outside. He discovers, however, that he's got a stowaway, hidden in a little maintenance crawl space. A scared little girl, who we come to realize is Kleya. And immediately, moved to compassion, he takes her in, aiming to keep her safe. Our next flashback shows the two of them a bit older, Kleya may be age 12 now. The two of them are seemingly traveling refugees, trying to sell an antique to a local merchant in some small village so that they can afford some food. And of course, we know Luthen as the antique guy, so this seems right up his alley. But he's unable to convince the merchant to give him the price he wants. So now, the child Kleya marches up to the merchant and negotiates for Luthen, better than Luthen, and gets the merchant to agree to Luthen's asking price because she's better at this than he is. As they leave, he congratulates her, saying, "Well done." Now, there are a couple ways to interpret this. One, that Luthen was merely playing a character, that they both were, and that it was all a work, and that it went according to plan. That he had intended for Kleya to ultimately handle the negotiation because he's trying to teach her how to haggle. And this congratulations, well done, means that she has learned well from him, demonstrating that he is a good negotiator and antique salesman, and that he is passing on his knowledge to her. Alternatively, the scene is exactly what it appears to be, and Kleya is just better and smarter than Luthen is, and he's not even halfway decent at negotiations, and that Kleya has to hold his hand and clean up his messes because she's far more competent than he is. And that well done means, wow, you're good at this. Thank you, Kleya, for doing what I couldn't. I'm not really going to fault anyone for reaching either conclusion here, because we really do just have to speculate on what the phrase well done means and is intended to mean. And in the process, we're making a judgment call on the writers and their intent and their competency. And there's always going to be a level of speculation involved in that. Our next flashback features Luthen and Kleya in another town as they spot a group of civilians being lined up for execution by the Empire. Luthen suggests that they move on, while Kleya defiantly replies that she's not going anywhere. Of course, she can't actually do anything about it, because of course she can't, and to the show's credit, she doesn't even attempt to do so. She just has to watch, powerless, as this hardens her resolve. She catches up with Luthen and says, "When do we start fighting back?" And he says, "We have." And she replies, "By walking away?" I think the show pretty clearly frames this one as Luthen being in the right. Kleya being justified in her emotions, of course, but Luthen ultimately being correct that they had to walk away from that one. He says, "This is how we fight. We'll lose many times before we eventually win. All you know now is how much you hate. Keep that alive until you know what to do with it. And when I tell you to move, you move." Kind of a weird thing to say, considering that she's the boss and he's the subordinate, but what do I know? The fourth and final flashback shows us what is presumably Kleya's first attack on the Empire. She and Luthen have rigged some military vehicles to blow, and now the time has seemingly come to detonate the bombs. But Kleya, being an angsty teen now, thinks that Luthen's gone soft and won't really do it. "You're backing out," she says. "I knew you'd do this."
I knew you would do this!
Luthen tells her to take in the world surrounding her, the beautiful day, the people going about their business, enjoying themselves. "You need to accept what you're leaving behind," he says. She replies, "None of that matters right now. You're just being sad. You're afraid." After this, Luthen offers, or at least pretends to, offer Kleya the opportunity to press the button herself. He passes her the detonator and he tells her, "Go ahead, press it." And she hesitates and asks, "Why are you doing this?" Eventually, she does work up the nerve to reach for the button before Luthen takes it back and presses it himself, blowing up the convoy. Now, what are these flashbacks meant to tell us? Yes, they're filling out these characters' lives, showing us their formative moments, the moments that are burnt into Kleya's memory. But what more are we supposed to take from them? Well, to answer that, I do think that we need to take a look at present-day Kleya's mission in the hospital, where she's able to infiltrate and detonate, bomb the ships, disguise herself as a nurse, sneak through the halls, locate and manipulate every camera angle on her, take out the guards, navigate the situation just about flawlessly, all the way up to its successful conclusion. This is the first and only time in the entire show that we have seen Kleya involved in an action scene, as a sharpshooting, gunslinging action hero. This is not who this character has been up until this point, because that's not something that she ever needed to be. She was a great character, managing communications and logistics for the rebellion, and it never, at even one point, crossed my mind that she should be pulling jobs and shooting stormtroopers. But this character, like many others, has been redefined in Season 2. Now, granted, a drastic situation like this is a fine opportunity to explore another side of a character, but I'm just not convinced that this character had this side until this episode was made. So it's then my suspicion that these scenes are intended to show us how driven and ambitious Kleya is, that she's been fully motivated for a moment like this all of her life, and moreover, her need to do this for Luthen carries her through it. Now, the problem becomes that the flashbacks establish these character traits for Kleya by contrasting her with Luthen, right? You show me that she is smart by showing me that she haggled successfully while Luthen failed. You show me that she wants to help and save people by showing us that Luthen walked away. The illustration of her character lies in the contrast between the two of them, and I think that was generally unnecessary. Firstly, you don't need to convince me that Kleya was this no-nonsense, sharp-as-a-tack tough talker, because I already watched Season 1 and concluded that. Moreover, a trio of scenes showing me, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, I care about this more than you do, does not endear me to this character. The question then becomes, does the writer agree with these sentiments? Do they intend to convince us that this is the case, and do they think that they accomplish this goal? Again, we veer heavily into the realm of speculation here, but a viewer of the show is going to view these scenes in some sort of light. What do they impress upon the viewer? What does somebody who's watching this show take from these scenes? I can imagine that some might take these in such a way, and it's far from impossible, that these scenes were constructed in order to paint Luthen as less competent, less intelligent, and less virtuous than his female subordinate. That he is not as good a person as the woman who he treats as a sidekick, and that he never has been. That this was done to prop Kleya up, and to do so at Luthen's expense. If that was the intent, which is possible, I would say they failed. The scenes more so demonstrate Luthen as a cool, steady hand guiding her and teaching her, patiently, despite her arrogance. The man is a damn saint putting up with her attitude, and that he raises her up to be wise and patient and pragmatic. There is another little bit I left out from that fourth flashback. When Kleya accuses Luthen of stalling or backing out and just being sad, he explains himself, saying, "I need to know that you're making a choice." And when she accuses him of being afraid to push the button, he says, "I'm only afraid of what I'm doing to you." I mean, it's excellent. These scenes don't convince me that Kleya is smarter or better than Luthen, even if that is how this one in particular comes across to me. They make me like Luthen more, and they make me like Kleya less, which I would say, pretty confidently, was not their goal. Again, it seems to me they wanted to show how ambitious and driven she is, and it appears that they thought this could only be accomplished by portraying her as impetuous and intolerable, which 1 is wrong, and 2 leaves your audience to feel that the character is both impetuous and intolerable. In the same way that you don't have to portray Luthen as incapable in order to make Kleya look smart, you don't have to portray Kleya as an unlikable smartass to make Luthen look humble or patient. I don't love these scenes. And while I do love the idea of these hospital scenes, I don't care at all for their execution. I have been tempted, multiple times, to say something to the effect of, oh, she pulled off this job flawlessly, and to highlight this as a problem with the episode. However, to be fair, she does slip up and get caught on a security camera. She dodges most of them, but she does get caught on one of them, so clearly she wasn't flawless, right? She just accomplished the mission without a single setback, and escaped and minimized her risk so effectively that she had more than enough time to get off world and never be found, well before they would ever discover her slip-up. I mean, does that sound flawless to you? The show highlights, more than once, that this job was so well done, it was so clearly professional, it should have taken a whole team of people to pull that off, but she managed to do it all on her own.
Alone. There's no team. It's only her.
Right, she's not just good at this, she's excellent at it. And I ask, why? Does this character have any limitation or flaw? That is, outside of her choice to remain on Coruscant so that she could be tracked down. Does she have a limited or defined skill set that the show can operate within? Or can we really just throw her into any situation and she'll navigate it like a pro because she's just that good? Watching through Season 1, and even up through Season 2 to this point, you may have thought that she was in her role as dispatcher for a specific reason. That she's not built for action. That she was, intelligent and had a keen mind for espionage, but it turns out that she's also a sharpshooting action hero, as well as virtuous, upright, charismatic, and mercantile. She is a ranged melee tanky DPS assassin, as well as a radio operator and super spy. She's just like Luthen, but with none of the negatives, or complexities, or moral strife. What an upgrade. I mean, given Luthen's backstory and that specific scene we just watched, you might imagine that Luthen might want to shield her from the horrors of outright warfare. Maybe not train her to fight, or shoot, or to kill, and that's why she's in the role that she's in. There's some reason that she's not out there doing Vel's job instead of Vel. She was trained for a specific and limited skill set for a reason. Hell, I don't even know that Vel or Cinta could have pulled off this job solo, but she sure can. She can do Vel's job better than Vel, and Luthen's job better than Luthen, and her own job that nobody else can. This further annoys me the more that I think about it. I am emotionally moved by Kleya's sacrifice here, but I am wholly unsatisfied with how we accomplish this emotional payoff. This is not Kleya. Kleya should not be doing this. And if this episode is meant to show us who Kleya is, I do not think that I like Kleya very much. And that's the end of episode 10. Now, episode 11, I believe I will conclude by the end of this, that episode 11 is the best episode in Season 2. This thing was absolutely painful to watch, because it's so much better than the rest of this trash. It is sad to look at this and realize that it's being wasted on Season 2. It hurts to think of what could have been. Paarthurnax and Krennic are great, and they have this excellent little back and forth now that Krennic can finally be taken seriously. K2 is just consistently charming and funny. I laughed while rewatching this. Holy shit, that was a breath of fresh air. I laughed at a joke in Andor Season 2.
Has my reputation slid so precipitously?
Yeah, unfortunately, it has. We get to watch the ISB actually use the resources available to them to follow up on a crime and to track down Kleya. That's a fucking first for this season, and it's just satisfying to watch these two factions follow breadcrumbs that they naturally would to converge on a single point for a big showdown. It's been a while. Dedra's at maximum performance as well, honestly. And as I promised, this is where we get that explanation for how she tracked down Luthen. So it's revealed here that she accessed some classified info, and more on that later, and that she used this to track down a lead regarding a rebel spy who, during interrogation, disclosed that he was recruited by an antique dealer. Dedra tracked down Luthen seemingly because what? Because he meets with people and introduces himself as, "Hi, I'm Luthen the antique dealer. Look at my cargo ship full of antiquities." He was probably in his fucking wig, too. Only in Season 2. Only Season 2 could tell me that Luthen slips up so fucking badly that people he hires know right off the bat that his secret identity is that of an antique dealer, and that all it took was for one person to follow the lead that was left from the spy in that interrogation to find the antique dealer Luthen. So no. Actually, no, I'm gonna say no, that this wasn't a satisfying reveal as to how she managed to track down Luthen. This is pretty contrived. I want to stress, the fact that she gathered this info during the time skip isn't the problem here. The fact that we didn't have this info last episode isn't the problem here. The reveal of the Starpath unit, the reveal that she had won and that Luthen was caught, was effective because that information was withheld from us. That was a strong choice, choosing to explain in the following episode. The problem is that, again, rather than this acting as a consequence of earlier actions, as a continuation of the episodes that came prior, rather than paying off earlier events, you've just injected even more new info into the story during the time skip, and you're using that info to fuel the payoff. And it's not satisfying to watch. Furthermore, this being accomplished through Luthen's lackadaisical incompetence. His newfound ability to let anyone and everyone know that he, Luthen, is Luthen the antique guy, is a demolition of his character. And that is what does him in. Luthen loses. Luthen dies because he's poorly written. And that's barely an exaggeration. I appreciate that this is here. I appreciate that we get an explanation, that's an improvement over the 10 previous episodes, and that this was done in a way to tell us something about the Empire and about Dedra. But no, I am completely unsatisfied by this explanation. There was so much time that could have been better spent in this season to actually flesh out Dedra's pursuit of Luthen, but they just opted to give us this instead. Just trust me, during the time skip I did a massively important thing that I'm going to pay off right now. And the even bigger problem being that this is the means by which we shuffle Dedra out of the story. Again, more on that a little later. For now, they need to track down Kleya, so Dedra gives some advice to the agent who's currently looking for her. She says, check some of his old radios. We seized one from Krieger. So with this, he goes to the gallery and checks Luthen's central radio instead of doing the thing that Dedra told him to do. But by chance, you lucky devil, this radio happens to work also, despite what she just said, and they pick up a signal from Kleya. Now immediately I'm asking, did Kleya seriously just Morse code transmit her exact fucking address over the radio to send out an SOS? She's reaching out to people who already know where the safe house is, and she decided to broadcast the full address over the airwaves just so that the ISB can get it and to track her down? But it turns out she didn't do that. They show up at the apartment building, yes, but they have to ping a signal back to her and then track where that signal leads in order to figure out what apartment she's in. Because this is the best episode in Season 2. Andor and person Andor's been working with, that guy, they're here also, and I think this is the best look that we get at this apartment building all season, and like, God, you can practically smell the place. It's rancid. Just look at it. What a set. I love how damp and dank it is. Again, one of these moments where I'm just sitting back here saying, wow, yeah, I'm enjoying this. Finally, I'm enjoying something in Season 2. This is a nice change of pace. But Kleya's here to ruin the day, unfortunately. Andor and Guy are here to rescue her, but she says she's not going anywhere.
We cannot stay here, Kleya.
And go where?
The rebel base? Yavin? Literally anywhere? Just stay here and fucking die then, you dumb bitch. Oh, but they'll be mean to me. Then stay here and fucking die. So what? They'll be mean to you.
Oh, I know about Yavin. I know all about it. I know what they think of Luthen. That's to be my sanctuary.
Then fucking die. Holy shit.
Oh, call me a dumb bitch one more time.
Dumb bitch!
So because she's a goddamn moron, they sit here long enough for So because she's a goddamn moron, they sit here long enough for the Empire to track her down and close in around them. But by episode 12, they eventually convince her to stop being an idiot and fight their way to safety. She's ready to face her fears. She's prepared herself for the possibility that they may say mean words to her on Yavin. Truly, a fate worse than death. What a sacrifice.
Words hurt!
Words? Okay.
Okay.
Now there's a big action scene where Andor and K2 and this guy are fighting through the ISB officers, and really an action scene like this in the finale of the show should feel like a celebration of these characters and their relationships with one another and how far they've come together. But it's not, because you didn't devote any time to building that up. These are just people that Andor met like last friggin' episode. Like, it's cool to watch K2 throw people around, but I just can't care. You skipped the part where you make me care. You actually did skip the part where you make me care. And I'd like to at least be impressed by Andor's heroism, but of course, it's just the Force that's bending people's blaster shots away from him, so never mind. The reason that Andor pulled off this, or literally any other job in either season, was the Force, right? He was never competent, he was never smart, he was never skillful or intrepid or agile or adept. Those are not the reasons that Andor ever succeeded or has been like a good, likable character. It's always been the Force. Which, hey, maybe that explains Kleya too, I don't know. But back on the Rebel base, Mon Mothma has her Justin Bieber haircut back, so that nobody mistakenly respects her or takes her seriously. And Kleya's welcomed in and treated in the medical ward, because of course she is. These people aren't friggin' cannibals or whatever the hell she thought, or at least pretended to think so that we could stall for an action scene. Here we get one final cameo from Sol Guerrera, which is nice, because he was in desperate need of some fleshing out for the sake of Rogue One. And I really wish there was more, as it increasingly feels like this was supposed to be a subplot about the growing tensions between him and the rival rebellion outfits, with Will being a key player. But of course, this was likely cut in favor of, the other stuff. But Mon Mothma says, Sol, I need you to listen to reason. And for a moment, this seems like it gets through to him, as he says, perhaps... Wait a minute, is that Mon Mothma? You look fucking ridiculous! So here's the scene where Andor breaks the news to Will. Luthen died, Will. I'm sorry. And he's so beaten up by this. He's stunned. He needs a hug. And I'm again wondering, what was all this? Why did we do this? Now here's something else, and correct me if I'm wrong, but have Will and Luthen ever even shared a scene together? Have these characters ever been on screen at the same time or spoken a word of dialogue to one another within the show? I don't think they have. And we'll get to spend more time with Will mourning Luthen, who he cared for so deeply, apparently, than any number of other deaths. Okay. Granted, they do say a toast for the fallen. Andor and Vel get together and offer remembrance for everyone they've lost. They named Gorn, Nemik, Terramin, Senta, the Gormans, Ferrix. Hey, at least they actually remembered that Ferrix happened. After Gorman, of course. Gorman always comes first. Andor's mother, the Donnies, all Donnie. And that's everyone. Not forgetting anybody. Fucking hate this show. Then there's a couple more lines which I guess I'll give the show the benefit of the doubt here and say I don't know that they're talking about Gorman, that they're eulogizing the Gormans yet again more than anyone else because they were so perfect and so virtuous. Oh gee, I'd sure be fired up if somebody were talking bad about the Gormans, the people who killed my fucking wife! But I don't know that that's what they're talking about. I don't know that for sure, so let's keep moving. So back at the tail end of Act 3, Bix made the decision to leave the rebellion and leave Andor personally, not wanting to get in the way of his work for the rebellion. She believed it would be worth sacrificing their relationship for the sake of the rebellion, or at least that's what she claimed. We don't know just yet why she actually left. Andor's now been without her for a year, and in this scene, Vel asks him, "Hey, why don't you go reunite with Bix sometime? I'm sure she'd be glad to see you." And he says, "Yeah, I don't know. This is the last episode, and I don't think we really have time for all that. It's not really worth it at this point." So because I expect things to matter, I wondered if we might get a payoff for the Bix drug abuse arc from Act 2. I considered, man, things could really go in a dark direction. Bix off on her own, without a mission, without a goal, without purpose, she could totally relapse. And Andor, there's a good chance he'll go looking for her. I mean, that would be entirely in character for him, just like he's gone looking for his sister. Oh, but I don't know if he wants to find Bix in a bad state like that, strung out in a death stick trap house somewhere. That would be a really heavy scene. But of course, me expecting continuity, me expecting payoffs for various story beats, is delusional. So Andor never seeks her out, and Bix is doing A-okay because, well, just because. But we do get one scene of Andor having a dream about his sister, to tell us he still thinks about his sister and wishes that he could find her. Which I already assumed he did. I didn't really need to be told that. I wasn't under the impression that he literally forgot that his sister existed just because Tony Gilroy did. This is the show's way of saying, there will be no resolution. If you thought this was building up to something, what are you, an idiot? Don't you realize that this is literally Season 2 of Andor? But thanks for the Disney Plus money, asshole. And look, am I being too cynical at this point? Because it strikes me as a strange decision to remind the audience that you didn't do this plot. Why bother at this point in the story? We wasted so much time. Whoa! Hey, the clock stopped ticking! Would you look at that? Well, folks, we're out of time. It looks like we're going to sudden death. Speaking of sudden, let's see how Dedra's doing. So it turns out, it was as it was revealed to us in that last episode, that a few years ago, a package came to her door. She committed mail fraud. That's it. She opened somebody else's mail, and now she's being busted for mail fraud. Holy shit. You thought Al Capone had it rough. Holy shit. So some packages showed up at her door. She opened them, read the mail, logged the information because it might catch... The packages showed up at her door. She opened them, read the mail, logged the information because it might help her catch Luthen, but then her email account got hacked and leaked, and she's going to jail. That's the payoff. Should have used Pleach bit. I, for one, am sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails, Dedra. And that's it. Game over for that character. She's going to prison for mishandling classified information off screen, and she's gone for fucking good. If Andor's arrest and sentencing in Season 1 felt even a little contrived, this is 10 times worse. Oh, but the theme. Get it? Her parents were criminals, and all she amounted to in the end, in the eyes of the Empire, was a criminal. Because something happened off screen during a time skip. Whoop-de-fucking-do. I hope we all enjoyed this amazing character arc for Dedra Meero, who began as an ambitious upstart, worked her way into prominence, botched a job, succeeded at a job, but got dumped and strangled, and then got arrested for mail fraud. What more can you ask for? What a satisfying conclusion. Parthenax joins the Blades, Krennic joined a traveling circus, and that's it for the ISB. The rest of them probably got blown up in the Death Star, I don't know. The end. And that's pretty much it. Andor walks across the base and gets in his ship, and we get a little "where are they now" montage. Here's Dedra in jail. Here's Axis being sad. Here's Cyril and Bix and Brasso. Remember Force healing? Oh, look at him. He almost had a plot. And would you look at that. Here's Bix with Andor's baby, off on planet Farmville, where Andor also abandoned his droid 4 years ago. Andor will not be the last Jedi. Here's a cool little thing, though, just to end on a positive note. So, of course, this series brings us right into Rogue One, with Andor now knowing about Galen Erso and the Kyber crystals on Jedha, and that's the mission that he's headed off to now. The show leads right up to that moment, so you could pick up with Rogue One to continue the story, right? It's the same day, he's wearing the same outfit, except that he's not. I lied. I just lied to you. He's just off on a mission for something, and a couple days later he'll end up in Rogue One. They couldn't even give us this little nod. I went and I checked this because I was hoping that this was the case and that I could give the show some points for this, but instead I lied and wrote this in as a joke. It's as funny as anything else in season 2, so and out with a whimper, that's really it. He gets in his ship and flies away. This episode kinda sucked. This whole season sucked. What a disappointment. It's very easy to lie and claim that this show is better than it actually is, when it's not. It's not better than it actually is. Act 4 is better than pretty much anything else in this season, because at least we have some solid emotional moments, reviewing Luthen and Kleya's relationship, his death, how it affects everyone, something resembling cause and effect, the Empire tracking Kleya down, actually being a competent threat, following leads, other stuff that which I generally feel kind of ambivalent about, while finding that I'm less offended than I was by the other acts. To best demonstrate my point, I figure perhaps we might run through an incredibly unscientific list of pros and cons for each episode and assign them a crude number rating. Let's get to it. Episode 1. This thing's fucking awful. But it starts off alright. I'm gonna say 1 point in the positive for Andor's chat with the Imperial soldier. And I almost want to give a point for the way that Andor looks around the TIE fighter when he steps in and realizes that he recognizes nothing inside. But by the same token, I think this is negated by his decision to just act like he knows what he's doing and drive it into a damn wall. Overall, I'm gonna put down a point in the negative for the big escape. Now, some episode somewhere has to get a con for the Empire not following up on this attack on a freaking military base. So I'm going to place that here, though it debatably could go elsewhere. In the interest of fairness, I've got to give a point for Bix's mental breakdown in this episode. It's nice to see that Season 1 had some consequences. Luthen and Kleya just chatting away about Cassian in front of passersby has got to get a negative. Andor in the jungle, huge negative. The fucking Gorman infomercial, negative. The rest of the jungle bullshit. How many negatives can I even give? But between it and the Imperial trash, like, half this episode is just unwatchable. I'll give more for the cringe propaganda clowns and for everyone else involved. That one dumbass Parthenax line and this insufferable Krennic joke, the fucking wink. We'll call the jungle equally as cringe and give it 3 points total as well. And lastly, a point for Mon Mothma and her interactions with other characters, as well as the cinematography in that big long shot. There you go. That's something like 9-3. Honestly, better than I expected this to score. It's still a 1 out of 5.
This is a world where I can shoot at an enormous collection of stormtroopers in an Empire base and simply leave with no repercussions.
Episode 2. We're back in the jungle. It's still terrible. Dedra being cringe, not a fan. This line comes across as really childish.
I don't want the Gorman project.
Maybe it's just the delivery, maybe they should have gotten another take. It rubs me the wrong way. Kleya is only getting worse, so there's another point. Cyril's back though. My man gets a point. Always nice to see his passion for order and for justice. Point for him. I am generally indifferent about the rape guy, whatever, nothing for that. Not even going to touch the undocumented persons thing here that permeates this episode, because it makes sense in universe, even if it feels meta and a little, iffy. But another point for Mon Mothma and Tay-K. There you go. Well, we have more jungle bullshit. We have the retards discovering fruit scene, and then, of course, the rock, paper, scissors. Overall, what are we at? 2 to 5 here? Do the math on that. It's actually closer to a 1 out of 5 again. Episode 3. This episode features no jungles. Hoorah! Instead, it features Cyril and Dedra's unforgettable luncheon. Huge point for that one. Though it does unfortunately also feature Mon Mothma getting white girl wasted and pissing herself, which is being interspliced with a fucking rape scene. It's just in such poor taste, I honestly have to give it a negative. Of course, on the other side of that is Cinta's role in this episode, which is excellent. She's like the damn Grim Reaper when she shows up. I love it. And of course, Andor attacks yet another military target, and there will be no response. And I pin that on this episode. Unlike the first two, there are absolutely things in this episode that I would seek out to watch. Or at least, there's one at least. So, that's gotta be worth something. 2 out of 5. It's not good, but it's an improvement. Act 1, overall, is terrible, even if there is literally a scene that I quite like. Episode 4. This one kicks off with another Bix hallucination, so I'll give you a point for that. Cyril getting his start with the Gormans, really cool to see. I'll give you a point for that. Glad to see him given some time to shine. DSP is pretty cringe, but I'm not going to give him a negative here. The Gormans are allowed to be a little cringe. Andor and Bix having their nonsensical argument is kinda a chore to watch. I don't hate it, but I guess I lean in the direction of a negative. We have a discount Lonnie and Luthen scene, which I'm pretty indifferent to, up until Luthen chooses to send off Andor to planet Dedra. So that goes down. This is the episode where Will meets Sol Guerrera, definitely a point for that one, the man needs more scenes. And Will was a great character to bridge this gap. Bix hits the sticks, and because we're at this point just waiting to see where this leads, I'm not going to give a point in either camp. Overall, I don't feel particularly strongly about these positives or negatives, but I'm inclined to say that there are more positives than negatives. So, 3 out of 5. Keep it up. Episode 5. I have friends everywhere. I have friends everywhere?
I have friends everywhere?
I have friends everywhere? You get a point for that one.
Pathetic!
Cyril's continued hard work gets a point. Great job, King. Luthen investigating Bix was cool, but Bix's response...
Give it.
Not so cool. No, it's just for sleep, man. I just need $5, bro. I just gotta get gas. I just gotta get some gas in my car, man. Come on, just spot me a $5, man. I'll pay you back tomorrow, dude. I'm good for it. Come on, man. More Will and Sol, always appreciated. Andor's interaction with the Gormans, from chatting up hotelmen to shit-talking the rest of these dumb fucks. Glad to see it. You get a point. The rest of the episode continues along these lines. We see more of Sol Guerrera, Will, Andor spitting on the Gormans. Overall, a decent watch. If on this scale a 5 out of 5 translates to Season 1 level quality, then I am content to give this a 4 out of 5. Congratulations. Episode 6. Okay, before we even get started, Cinta's murder. Fuck you. Fuck you. Okay, but the episode actually opens with Andor clashing with Luthen. Good scene. It's a shame that it gets retconned next episode. And then, of course, Andor versus Luthen, round 2. This one's great. I'll give you a point for this for sure. Vel and Cinta reuniting, glad to see it. They get a point. The big party, kinda indifferent. Gotta give it a negative for the ending, at the very least. And all this is interspliced with DSP and that other fucking retard shooting and killing and murdering fucking Cinta. Honestly, a point for the Gormans, not just for the fact that they did it, but for how contrived it is. The big finale, of course, blowing up the building, feels like a huge moment, though it, of course, won't matter as soon as the credits roll. I can't in good conscience give it a thumbs up. How Vel handles Cinta's death almost feels like it should get a point, but it's really just mopping up the fallout, the radioactive fucking fallout of the Gormans murdering her, which is just such a huge point against this episode. It's such an insult, not just to the character or people who liked the character, but to the viewer, that we'd be so stupid as to think that this could even remotely pass for an acceptable means of killing off any character. Despite its positives, the negatives weigh so heavily on my desire to ever watch this episode again. I'd feel wrong giving this a 3 out of 5. 2 out of 5 feels harsh, but we'll say it's just shy of a 2.5 out of 5, which rounds down to a 2. Act 2 is definitely a big improvement over the first, and looking back over it, I find that while there's a good deal to be critical of, there's also generally more good than bad, even if it all absolutely goes to waste. Episode 7, Force Healing. What garbage? World-breaking garbage. Cyril's unexplicable behavior. That's a con. Dedra's reluctance to destroy the planet, her feeble attempts to talk Parthenax out of it. It's good to see. Here's a point for that. Cyril selling out to the Gormans. Sorry, another negative. The show's complete inability to carry on the consequences of Act 2, what with the naval bombing being just an insane thing to write into this episode while ignoring the last naval bombing. And Will's very presence. Holy shit. Wow. I'm seriously, do I need to go back and lower episode 5's score just because this one has retroactively made half of that episode worthless? Or do I just pin all this on episode 7? Because yeah, similar to Tony Gilroy, I forgot that Bix was addicted to hard drugs last episode. There's a point. Here's one for Andor as well. Wowzers. This is straight trash. I don't know, man. I thought I'd kinda give it a pass, but it really is just harmful to the season and the show overall. 1 out of 5. Pathetic. Episode 8.
The big one!
To start things off, I'm gonna give another point to Dedra, same reasons as last time. Then we'll give 1 negative for the Gormans overall and their stupid-ass chant. Absolutely gonna give you 1 for DSP on this one. Rebellions are built on hope. Give me a break. A point for Cyril overall, being an unhinged freak. The pointless waiting room scene. The Gormans and their pickaxes. Hey, pickaxes? Hey, somebody should tell Cyril about that. The strangling. The strangler. The crippler. The crippler! I did say Dedra's half of the scene was okay. I guess I'll give her 1. Here's a point for that low-energy-ass massacre for a bunch of people I don't like or care about. Cyril's chosen death among the crowd, that's pretty bad. In fact, him and everyone else marching into the obvious trap, also a point. Cyril's pitiful, pathetic fucking death, fuck you for that. The embarrassing K2 origin story. Andor even being here is bad. Here's one more for Andor sobbing and the big sad manipulative Gorman credits song. Also, this episode only happens because we ignored episode 6. Well, I'd say this is a blowout, if I'm being generous. And I mean generous. I guess this can have a 1 out of 5. It should damn near have a negative score for the immense and incredible damage that it has done to this show and its characters. Yowza. Absolute irredeemable trash. I may lose sleep tonight knowing that I didn't give this a flat 0. Episode 9. When I wrote and recorded my review of episode 9, I said that it was probably the worst episode of the series. But honestly, can it even possibly be as bad as episode 8? I'm no longer convinced. There's definitely some good stuff between Mon Mothma and Luthen, of course. There's a positive. Of course, Mon Mothma is terrible, and her speech is terrible, and the Empire are suicidally brain dead. Especially the teapot lady. Again, the result is that a good half of this episode is just unwatchable. I'm just going to factor in Mon Mothma's clash with her personal guard and her palpable terror as Andor whisking her away to safety. Just going to factor those both into the existing positive of her relationship with Luthen and the rebellion generally. Bix leaves Andor over at the tail end of the episode, and it's fine. It's pretty good, honestly, but there's so much baggage to do with anything Bix at this point in the season, I can't honestly praise it more than to say, hey, you didn't fuck it up entirely, congrats. Yeah, it's 1 out of 5. these negatives are massive, and I've still got to give one more just because there's still an argument to be had that this is worse than episode 1 or 8. Because while they're not just insulting your intellect or terrible in the plot department, this episode is a celebration of ignorance. It is an endorsement. It is an encouragement to shut your brain off and just soak up flowery words and soaring music, and I despise it. And yet, I shall grant it a generous 1 out of 5 rather than a flat 0. Truly, I am a magnanimous king. I've said about all that I can about Act 3 a couple times over at this point, except that I honestly haven't, because it does just get worse the longer you look at it. These episodes are all terrible in their own unique and special ways, and it's ultimately up to you to decide which is the absolute worst. I would entertain arguments for any of them, whether it's episode 1, or 8, or 9, hell, even 7's a contender. Almost. And I simply cannot shake the feeling, and maybe I'm being naive, but still, it's not going to take long for people to rewatch Season 2 and say, wait a minute, Cyril didn't actually learn any pertinent information, or wait a minute, Mon Mothma didn't actually learn any pertinent information, or wait a minute, Mon Mothma didn't actually disclose any pertinent information, or wait, what was the point of this scene? What was the point of this scene? Or this scene? Or this scene? Or this scene? Because these are not particularly deep criticisms. You don't have to dig very far to find problems with this show. And if you are digging, Cyril's gonna give you the fucking business.
I can kick you the fuck out of here for what the fuck you've done to me! Stop being such a wimp! You've killed me!
Episode 10. As terrible as Act 3 is, the failure to at least account for the events that happen in Act 3 is still a flaw, and gets a point in the con column. The Lonnie stuff is kinda a wash. I want to give it a point for Lonnie being great, but I also want to subtract the same point for Lonnie and Luthen being not great.
I have had Dedra Miro's code cert for a year now.
A year.
The confrontation with Dedra is great. Here's a point. Definitely not beating those simp charges, am I? Luthen jabbing himself, gotta give him a point. The haggling flashback? That's a negative in my book, sorry. The bombing flashback, however, I'll give a positive. Mostly just for Luthen. The other two were kinda a wash, honestly. Kleya's hospital infiltration? That's a negative. She should not have these action hero spy skills, sorry. Just gonna call a spade. This feels way out of her purview. Her ultimately killing Luthen, that and the general emotional turmoil that she's dealing with, that's got to amount to a positive. So, if you're keeping count, that's more positives than negatives. And while I'd sort of weigh the negatives more heavily here than the positives, we'll again find ourselves hovering around a 2.5, which in this case, I will round up instead. I give it a reluctant 3 out of 5. The negatives prevent me from wanting to rewatch this episode pretty much ever, but the flaws lie mainly in the execution rather than the ideas. Let's just leave it at a 3 out of 5 and move on before I start to reconsider. Episode 11. Finally, Krennic is allowed to be a good character after the disaster that was Episode 1. And Dedra's part in this scene, as well as her follow-up, are praiseworthy. The fact that she's going to jail for opening someone else's mail is a fucking joke. So, there's the negative. I'll give a point overall for the Empire having the competence to track Kleya, even if we have to wade through, wow, what an amazing character she is. So impressive, much skill. Oh, look at this, they got a hologram of her. Yeah, sure, that'll work. Remember your Andor hologram from Season 1 that you forgot about so that he can do literally anything he wants to this season? Beside the point. Again, K2's super refreshing, as is this scene between Krennic and Parthenax, though I'll just factor that into Krennic's existing point. So glad to have him here for one whole episode, being a cool character. Lastly, Kleya being an absolute dumbfuck is fucking dumb. I'll give another point to the episode overall, just for having the nerve to actually proceed at just the pace that it needs to in order to maneuver these various chess pieces across the board. Kleya, Andor, the ISB. I always seem to remember the shootout with the ISB being in this episode, but it's not. This episode is just the necessary lead up to that shootout, and it's really, really refreshing to watch. Easy 4 out of 5. Episode 12, The Final Frontier, the grand finale. Again, I'm generally indifferent about the shootout itself, though it's built on contrived idiocy, so I'm just gonna give her another point and forgive her sulking around in the rain like a pitiful sad sack. Much sad, very emotion. Sol Guerrera's cameo is nice, but in the context of the rest of the season, can't really give it a point. Will being all sad and bleary-eyed over a guy I've never seen him interact with does rub me the wrong way, but along the same lines, gonna sort of factor that into the Sol Guerrera thing and call it a wash. Lots of dialogue from other characters, whose feelings about Luthen I actually care about, though, so there's a point. Partagaz's suicide, by the time I've reached episode 12 of season 2, I'm so dulled I don't think I can even care enough to give it a point. Sorry buddy, kill yourself better next time. Dedra going to prison is an insult to the idea of a story, and the final walk to the ship, and where are they now? I don't fucking care. I don't like you, or these people, anymore. But this season's dragged them all through the mud, and this is about the most limp ending that you could have given me. But by the same token, I'll give it a point just to say, at least it's over. And then allow me to give the final farewell that Brasso never got. Absolutely insane that they left him out of the toast for the Fallen. Overall, I guess it's a 2 out of 5. I'm still not convinced that episode 10 should be a 3 out of 5, but I suppose it's better than this episode, so fair enough, I guess that matches up. So all things considered, Act 1 is hovering just above a 1 out of 5. Act 2 jumps all the way up to a flat 3 out of 5, which I feel kinda iffy about giving it in the context of the full season, but I guess we'll give those episodes some credit. Act 3 is a 0 out of 5 that is on life support, which occasionally has just enough of a pulse that it can't legally be declared dead, so I am obligated to call it a 1. But I can say confidently that it is worse than Act 1. And Act 4 averages out to a 3 just the same as 2. 4 is 3, which is 2 because 2 is a 3. Yeah. Here's a graph, because I like graphs. Soak it in. Here's another one. Again, this isn't science. Congratulations to both Act 2 and Act 4. You are both occasionally decent. And I can't bring myself to care enough to decide which one of you is actually better or worse, but there you go. Andor Season 2 is just blatantly unfinished and unpolished. It is a mire of dropped plot points and scrapped character arcs. It is where cause and effect goes to die. And it didn't need to be this way. It is my stern belief that the bulk of this season's problems come from a need to condense Tony Gilroy's original vision. The necessity to cut and trim and contract what honestly feels like 4 seasons of content into 4 distinct 3-episode chunks. And the end result is that it feels like we've explored none of these 4 ideas enough to actually satisfy the needs of any individual story. That these varied story beats have no room to breathe in this overstuffed 12-episode run, and manage to trample all over one another in the process of attempting to tell their own tales. Conflicting with one another, seeming to retcon one another at damn near every turn, as anything and anyone you expect to be an item of consequence is rushed off stage with just enough time to shuffle in the next contestant. But I fear as well that even with enough runtime, the problems that plague this season do not simply vanish. If Mon Mothma dancing to techno music at a rave happened in episode 9 of season 3 rather than episode 3 of season 2, how much better would it be? Would it be improved upon? Or is it just a bad idea? Yes, you could absolutely write a convincing story in which Cyril becomes disillusioned with the Empire and lashes out at Dedra. But that's not true for every story. Not everything can be fixed just by fleshing it out. Some ideas just need to be scrapped and improved upon. Would Cinta getting killed by an errant blaster shot be any better if it were a season finale? Or would it be even worse? It could be, perhaps, that it's just a terrible idea. and that this season is full of such ideas, and that trying to sort out any given story beat into one of these categories is folly. Because chances are, we'll never get to see what could have been, had Tony Gilroy the same resources as with Season 1. We can sit here all afternoon daydreaming about how this plot line or that plot line could be improved upon, but it starts with the recognition that there is a problem and that it should be addressed. And it seems that people are reluctant to even entertain the possibility that this could be the case. So, if there is a case to be argued, consider my hat to be in the ring. Right? If the show is as good as you say that it is, surely you can debunk what I'm saying. Yes? And the crux of that which I am saying, being Season 2 is not as good as Season 1. That in addition to being crudely cut together, Season 2 simply mishandles its characters and its varied attempts at mature themes and concepts. Mature in Season 1 meant slow-paced political intrigue and complex moral questions. Mature in Season 2 means violence, drug use, bad words, and rape. Mature in Season 2 is not a statement of tone, it's an ESRB rating. Take, for example, Bix and her storyline, Act 2 in particular, her drug addiction. As she is portrayed in the story, she's not a good person doing a bad thing for complicated reasons, she's just right. She's smarter, stronger-willed, more enlightened and virtuous than anyone else. Especially Luthen. She really can stop any time she wants. Now I'll freely admit, while this is a failure of the plot to not account for what should be a serious plot line, it does also offend me on a personal level, seeing this show downplay and dismiss the consequences of drug addiction. This seems like a really irresponsible addition to this story. This is a really destructive portrait of how a person might cope with serious trauma, and it is not appropriately condemned. This is a failure to tell a mature story, and a failure of the characters in the story. And it is as I write these words that it occurs to me that it is actually impressive, the level of investment that I have in these characters. But it also occurs to me as well that that was all on Season 1. Season 1 did all the legwork to make me care about these characters, and Season 2 has done next to nothing to endear them to me. The best character in Season 2, or at least the least damaged character in Season 2, is probably Sol Guerrera, even if he does get cucked by Act 3. So I'll award him the title of least damaged character, how about that? But the award for best character goes to Lonnie. Lonnie the legend. Great guy, great story, and while his scenes may have some problems, they're more so problems with Luthen than they are with him. The most damaged character in Season 2, hands down, is Cyril Karn. Mon Mothma's not looking great either, and frankly, neither is Cassian Andor. The worst inclusion of a character in Season 2 is Bix. Bix as a character could have been cut from this season entirely, and this would only have minor ramifications on the plot, while sparing us the most distractingly controversial and morally irresponsible content in the season. The worst utilized character in Season 2 is Dedra, whose storyline simply peters out without even referencing the events of the season, but rather referencing events that happened outside of the series as a means to quickly shuffle her off the screen and into a prison cell. The least respected character in Season 2, excluding the obvious, is Cinta. Her romance with Vel was the most interesting and compelling relationship in Season 1, while her unceremonious nonsense death to worthless, nameless non-characters was absolutely laughable. Her relationship, her backstory, and any questions of her driving motivations die with her, in the streets of Gorman, at the hands of the people you are clapping for. And all of this prompts me to rethink my initial thesis that this season was merely a disappointment, and that it's not offensively bad. Because this is pretty lousy. If you like Andor, rewatch Season 1 and simply stop at the end of Episode 12. It trails off well enough to lead us into the events of Rogue One. The fates of Cyril, Dedra, Cinta, Bix, or Luthen may remain unresolved, but let's be honest, we don't get much in the way of resolution here either. There are ideas here, there are characters here, that needed better than Season 2 of Andor provided them. I feel confident in saying this shit will age worse than Endgame and a hell of a lot quicker. The critics got this one wrong.
No, I swear to God, it's good this time, guys. I swear it's just like Andor. It's so good, bro. Those of you who defend Andor and Skeleton Crew and try and say it's good will have your place in the lake of fire on the day of judgment. Jehovah will bring down almighty judgment upon you. He will rain hellfire upon your heads. You will be burning in unimaginable pain, fire and brimstone and sulfur, where the worm never dies and the fire's never quenched. Those of you who still support the so-called Star Wars after all of the rapes and disappointments and cash grabs, after the blasphemy that was Kenobi.